Hello, it's Karen, and I'm at the Cool Tools studio to show you how to use our finishing touches molds. These finishing touch molds are really precise, which is great for making the exact same shape over and over again, which really lends a look of professionalism to your work. So these molds make it super easy to build up a collection of elements that you can add to any piece. And I really like to make them all at once because it's so quick, and then you have this nice little library that you can pick from when you're wondering what your piece needs. I've had a lot of fun with them. This is just a small collection of the pieces that I've been making with these finishing touches molds. They look beautiful in copper, and for this piece, I combined the individual units into these diamond shapes before applying it to this bracelet, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But they're also great as just little pieces to build cute, small, simple studs. And they're an excellent way to make something that looks very complex, but was actually super easy to assemble. So I think you're going to love working with these molds. I'm going to show you how to use them. I've done quite a bit of testing with different clay bodies to see which perform best in these molds. Art Clay Silver does well in them, and Hadar's clay performs beautifully in them as well. Also, our Cool Tools brand clays perform very well in these molds. Unfortunately, I did not have very much success using the PMC clay bodies, as they would peel out instead of staying in the low areas. So when you're using these molds, you want to make sure that you're using fresh clay or freshly reconstituted clay. If your clay is dry, it's going to be more difficult for you to get it into those low areas, and your surface might reflect the dry nature of the clay with some cracks. So I have some really fresh EC960 here, and I'm going to be pushing it down into my mold using this clay scraper and then pulling it across to clean up the top surface. This is something kind of like rolling a coil, where you see someone do it and you're like, wow, that looks really easy. And it is once you get the hang of it, but it might take a couple tries for you to figure out the right angle for when you're applying the clay and scraping it off. So again, I'm really pushing the clay down. Try and make sure I'm getting up to all those edges. And then I'm going to be removing the clay from the scraper, and be careful, this edge is sharp, so I'm pulling down. And then I'm kind of scraping across to remove. So that looks good. I'm going to move on to the 3mm size. And look how quick that was. Just like that, you have all these shapes that you can incorporate into your jewelry. So if you were to pull a little hard and kind of push down too much and pull away from some of those edges, it's a really simple fix. I just dampen my fingers and then kind of gently massage it back up to that edge. And then just go over that one more time to scrape away any leftover moisture. All right, so now I'm going to put clay into my 2mm. And I love that these molds come with 3 sizes in one. It gives you lots of creative potential. All right, so my clay's in these molds, and since there's quite a bit of surface that is covered, it's going to take a while to dry if you leave it out. I would give it a couple of hours. But if you have a clay dehydrator or a hot plate or a mug warmer or something, you can speed things up to about 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to move this off to dry and show you how easily they come out. If you noticed, I didn't use Cool Slip. And Cool Slip actually makes it a little more difficult to work with because they'll kind of roll out instead of staying in. So don't use Cool Slip. It's really easy to get them out, I promise. So this one has been dried, and I like to put an extra work surface on top before flipping. And then some of them might stick a little bit because of static, but if your piece is dry, they should really just kind of fall out. And then there's a couple that are sticking just because of static. But you want to make sure your pieces are thoroughly dried before removing them, because you will distort and smoosh the forms if they're not completely dry and you try to remove them. So just like that, look at all of these shapes that you have to work with. And at this point, you can either just pick them up individually and apply them to your piece, or you can build little units like I did for this cuff bracelet. And I'll show you how to do that. And then you can just move them as a grouping. So these shapes join really well with just water. And if you were to use paste, it would get a little messy. So I'm just kind of arranging a little triangle here. And then I'm going to use some water to dampen them. And I'm really going to saturate them, because you kind of want the water to soak into the forms. You're not just joining at the edges, you want it to really get into that shape so that they build a strong bond together. So I'm going to kind of nudge them to make sure they're nice and tight, because the more surface contact they have, the more likely they are to stick together. And that's my cute little triangle. So I could sit here all day and make tons of them. That way they're ready to go for a piece. But I have one here that I've arranged, this nice little unit. And when you're applying these pieces to your forms, since we're not using paste and that gets messy, you want to make sure that you dampen the surface you're applying them to and really make sure that it's nice and moist to receive the new form. So this is slightly damp clay because I just rolled it out. So it's not going to soak up the water quite like dry clay was, but if you're adding to dry clay, you want to really make sure like there should be water sitting on your surface, whether you're starting with wet clay or dry clay. So then I'm going to pick up my unit, and I'm going to place it there and kind of give it a gentle little push. Not hard enough to scratch the surface or anything, but I want to make sure it's really nestled in. And it should kind of cling. There should be a point where it's not going anywhere when you tap it. So and I'll sometimes just go over it to redampen everything and make sure there's going to be a nice strong connection. Now just allow it to dry, and a good way to make sure it's on there is to give it a nudge once it's dry and make sure it doesn't pop off. And then you'll just treat it like every other project. Give it a good sanding and then fire it according to the instructions in your clay. These finishing touches molds make it really easy for you to build up an inventory of details that you can add to any composition. They're a lot of fun to work with, and I hope you give them a try. Thanks for watching.
Visit our Learning Center at cooltools.us for more cool jewelry making videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to sign up for our email list to be the first to hear about new videos, new products, and other cool stuff from Cool Tools.